Welcome! You're listening to the Every Day is a New Day show. I am your host, Kim O'Neill, and this is the show that reminds you we live in a world of infinite possibilities. You are more amazing than you know. You are never alone, and the one with the power has always been you. I speak with awesome guests who have inspiring stories and tools to support you on your journey forward. Every day is always a new day, and your day's looking pretty bright. Right. Hello and welcome to the show, everyone. I am your host, Kim O'Neill, and I have to admit, I am a bit giddy excited as today's interview is the first of a series of 6 interviews that I'm going to be doing with my fellow co-authors from our forthcoming book, Positive-Minded People, Inspiring Stories of Overcoming Adversity for Living a More Positive Life. And today I have not one, but 2 amazing guests tonight who are both co-authors from the book. You know, earlier this year, I was already in the frame of mind that I wanted to write a book this year. And I imagined that this first book would be a co-authored book. And I was waiting for just that right opportunity. And along came this one. And I knew pretty immediately that this was the one that was right for me. So I was pretty excited about that. And there are 9 total co-authors. We each wrote a chapter in the book where we tell one of our life stories about overcoming adversity. And I say one of our stories because we all have more than one story of adversity, right? We are all these multi-dimensional people. And something I have had to learn is that we're able to create a stronger connection with each other and even with ourselves when we share those stories, when we really look at those stories, reflect on them, and allow ourselves to have our story, to know that it means something for us when we're finally ready to, right? So it might take some time to get there. And so the stories in this book, Positive-Minded People, are truly powerful stories. I know that they will help you to feel supported and know that you are not alone, whatever it is that you're going through in life right now. And this book will be available for pre-order in October 2017, very, very soon here. So if you'd like to receive notifications about that, then I encourage you to go to the book's website, which is positivemindedpeople.com. And you can just do a quick little sign up there to receive announcements and be notified when it is available for pre-order. And so today I do have 2 fantastic guests with me, and they are Bennie Mayberry and Jaime Aplin. And I'm going to share with you just a little bit about their background, and then we're going to speak with them and learn more about who they are and talk about their story. So Bennie Mayberry is the founder of Positive-Minded People, a 6,000 plus meetup community group that produces uplifting content and events in Los Angeles, California. He's produced over 100 positive events in just the past 7 years that have been attended by thousands of people through his Positive-Minded People group. And they've been featured in Success Magazine, CBS, PBS, and picked up by numerous other digital media outlets. Jaime Aplin is a speaker, retreat facilitator, author, and transformational mentor. She creates space to help others uncover the love they have within themselves and allow them to feel free to be me. Much of her own personal journey has been to discover her own self-love, something she had never really experienced until recent years, but has been one of the most liberating experiences for her. And it shows because this girl is on a roll. So with that said, I would like to welcome both Bennie and Jaime to the show. Welcome.
Woohoo! Hey, hey.
Hey. How are you 2 doing tonight?
I am doing absolutely great.
How are you, Jaime?
Fabulous, thank you. It's lunchtime here in Australia, but the sun is shining. We were just talking about before, the weather here at the moment is kind of in between seasons. So yesterday was warm, but got colder. But today, yeah, it's a bit cold, but yeah, life is fabulous, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you guys.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I'm so glad you 2 could join me. I we have so much that we could talk about. And so we're really just going to, I have questions for you, but we're just going to go with the flow, and please feel free to share whatever comes up for you. So Bennie, I'm going to start a little bit with you and mention that I had the pleasure of reading your story as well as Jaime's, and I'm just blown away. I already knew a little bit, but I'm seriously so honored to be in this book with both of you because your stories are incredibly powerful. What I gathered from your story, Bennie, I mean, you've got themes of poverty, drug addiction, prison, hustling, advertising, not being a victim. I mean, you've got it all in there. It's
the Walmart. Walmart University.
Oh, that's funny. Well, you know what? And so I think maybe I jumped a little bit ahead because actually I want to ask you, because Positive Minded People isn't just a book. You have had this group now for quite a while. Would you tell us more about that and then how the book became part of this?
I moved to California in 2008, right after, I guess you can say, the climax of a lot of the struggle that I experienced in my younger life. 2 weeks after I moved here, my mother passed away, and I was faced from how do I start over? How do I create a new life? And Positive Minded People was birthed from that. After struggling with making friends and struggling with navigating my way in California, I felt like if I can't find it, I got to build it. And when I came across the Meetup platform, I said to myself, oh, this seems like a great tool to use. And I started a group that was surrounded around positivity. And I felt like, let's just do things like, let's go hiking or let's do volunteerism events. Had no idea it would be as successful as it was. And my first event was attended by hundreds of people, and I did very little advertising or very little marketing for it. And from that moment on, I started hosting events every single month, all the way to where we are now. And that's really how the story, as all of these people came into the play of the community, I've started hearing all of these amazing stories. And as I relished in people's stories of overcoming adversity, it just makes sense to start allowing people to use Positive Minded People as a platform to be able to express themselves and express their stories and release it. And this is really where this book came from.
Wow, that's fantastic. It sounds absolutely like you were listening to your intuition, and there really was a calling for people even at that time to have a place to be able to connect with each other and share their stories.
Absolutely. I think when you allow yourself to be a catalyst for at least trying to do something, you'd be surprised with the resources that shows up and the people that showed up in response.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love it. Well, Bennie, so everyone's going to benefit from buying this book, but would you give people just a little bit of a taste and an overview of your chapter so that they can know a little bit more about your story?
Absolutely. So my life has been a lot of changes in my, I guess you could say, youth. My family experienced great poverty. When I was 11, my father was sent to prison. My father was involved in selling drugs. And after that, me and my mother had to fend for ourselves. And it landed us in extreme poverty. My mother never really worked. My father always took care of us. And so we went from living in beautiful homes all the way to living in an abandoned house with no electricity, no water, no hot water, no gas. And over the next 10 to 15 years, I should say more about 10 years, me and my mother had to fend as if it was a homeless people on the street. I used to take my school lunch home just to have something to eat. We slept next to fireplaces, all while I was going to school acting like nothing was ever happening. And in those experiences, I learned what it meant to hustle. And hustle sometimes get a bad ideal, but for my version of hustling really is meaning taking the little that you have and making it work, and making it a stepping stone instead of something that's tripping you up. And my story is about how me and my mother found a way out, little by little. and how we overcome with absolutely no resources outside of ourselves, all the way up to the moment my mother died. That's really what my story is. And a lot of it includes suicide. It includes drugs. It includes doing the unconventional to be able to just have something to eat at night. It talks about learning how to smile when there's no reason to, and no one is giving you an excuse or giving you an opportunity or giving you a light at the end of the tunnel to do so. And that's really what my story is about, and that's what I shared in this chapter.
Wow. Okay, so wow. Yeah, you know what, Bennie? I don't think I'm the first one who's the book's coming out soon, so not many people have had the pleasure of reading it yet, but I don't think I'm the first one to say that I wanted to cry when I read it, because it touched me. Yeah, it really did. Well, you know what, let me ask you, so learning how to smile without a reason to, what I mean, tell me about that.
Get there.
Yeah.
Everyone has a bottom. And one thing about what the bottom will teach you is it will teach you to reach up higher. And being at so many different bottoms, you're faced with two choices. Either I'm going to succumb to it, or either I'm going to reach for whatever I can. Imagine yourself drowning, and you have no other choice but to reach for anything, whether it's a leaf, whether it's a piece of paper in the water, whether it's a board, whether it's, anything, you start reaching for something. And honestly, smiling was the only thing that I could reach for. I had things in my life that helped me at the time, like church, music, poetry. Those things really helped, and it kept me smiling. But when you're at your bottom, for me, my personality was always very determined and never was a quitter. And smiling became a refuge. The smiling was the only thing that you can do when you're adolescents and your mother's in the other room getting high off crack, and you have drug dealers coming in and out of your house and prostitutes coming in and out of your house as a child that's 14, 15, 16 years old, and you have no power. But to be in your room and to do poetry and to write, or simply just smile with no electricity and no food, you're faced with either being angry or you're faced with being happy. And the only way to smile is to choose it.
Powerful stuff. Very inspiring. And I identify with that as well, actually. I have some of that in my background. And it sounds really like that was maybe the start of you strengthening that positive-minded muscle.
It teaches you resiliency. Sometimes people go through one particular thing in life, and then there's other people who go through a multiple series of things. I will say for me, I probably fell in that category of the one who went through multiple things. But there's something about going through things, whether no matter how small or big, it teaches you to reach back in the past and make those tools and things that you do that makes you bounce back. It becomes a habit, it becomes something that you practice. And I will say having those situations over and over again, over a 10-year period of my life, it became so natural to be able to just bounce back. I mean, there comes a point where you just want to say, I'm tired, but after you practice knowing how to bounce back so many times, you become not scared of it. You just say, I can do this, and I've done it before. I've seen it before. No, I can go through that. I can go through this. So we're gonna do this thing.
Nice.
And it carries me even now in my professional life, because I tell you, working in the entertainment industry and advertising, you get a lot of no's before you get a yes. And I've learned that, hey, a no is just a stepping stone to the next yes.
And did you tell any of your friends at the time when you were, still going through all this with your mom in Alabama, did you tell any of your friends, or was there anybody that you could go to that would be a source of support or help for you?
Absolutely. Well, no, I have to be honest with you. When you're adolescents and you're dealing with a family member who's struggling with addiction and you're dealing in a household that you don't have running electricity, mind you, I didn't have electricity in my household for 3 years, from my sophomore year all the way into my senior year. Me going to graduation, I had to prepare my graduation clothes in the middle of the dark. Um, when you're adolescents, you don't want to tell anybody because you simply don't want the state to take you away from your mother. I mean, my mother was all that we had. So I rarely told anybody, but I smiled through every single situation. Everyone knew me as this positive, upbeat person. I was the one in school encouraging people and being a source of light to others, going home when I didn't even have lights, real lights, And I will say that I had things at that time in my life. I had my church family, and I had music, and I had things of that nature to kind of turn to. But there really wasn't anyone to turn. There really wasn't anyone to talk to about this stuff. It wasn't until my older adult life, that I began to really kind of process it. A lot of that processing came through this book.
Well, I wanted to ask you, what has the healing process been like for you?
Goodness. I will say the healing process for me has been simply not running away from the truth of what happened. My mother and her addictions, I saw her running away from her situations. I saw how even myself tried to run away in many times in my life. I tried to commit suicide 3 times, just overwhelmed by the things that I was experiencing. But I will say that in my healing process, it's been about, I remember in 2011, I took a 3-week sabbatical, and I literally went with a therapist, and I hashed out every single thing that I went through. I cried, I approached it, I touched everything. I tried to overtone every rock, about the situations and really, really deal with it. And that was probably one of the hardest periods of my life, but I chose that experience. And I think the important thing about being healed is choosing to be healed and being okay with what that looks like, even when it hurts.
Oh my goodness. So, Bennie, thank you so much for having the courage to share that. I hope that was not too invasive.
Please, I've been through it.
Okay.
I've been listening. There's nothing too invasive at this point.
Okay. It takes courage to be able to talk about the healing process. And I mean, especially just what you said at the beginning about not running away from it. That right there, not running away from it, choosing to allow ourselves to feel things. I mean, that's been a whole journey for me. I used to think like, well, if I'm crying, then I'm feeling it. But no, not necessarily. there's more that is involved in the healing process and actually feeling what's going on. So,
and can I just say something about feeling into it? Emotions are very powerful and can either lead you down very positive paths or very negative paths. I try to tell people it's okay to feel, but sometimes you need a safe space to be able to do that. And this is where friends and family, even therapists, that sounds like a very out there type situation. But many people don't give themselves permission to feel. And sometimes people who do give themselves permission to feel do not create a structure that will lead them to something more positive in the emotions. And I think that's very important in the healing catalyst, is being able to have a safe space, but also being able to be able to know what to do with the feelings and not be victimized by it. And that's what friends, family, structure, journaling, all those things gives you a structure to be able to express, let it go, and be able to keep pushing forward.
That is yes. So when you say structure, do you mean, say, going to a therapist, or do you mean something else? What does structure look like to you?
I would say when you experience something traumatic in your life, you don't really know what to do with the feelings. You just know that they're there. And you're either reacting to the feelings or you are becoming a victim of the feelings. Structure for me it's both mental and also both tangible. Mental, being able to say, I'm okay with feeling these feelings, understanding that I am not my feelings. These feelings are my truth in this moment, but they're not the truth of my life. The structure is being able to have friends and family in place to give a perspective so that you don't become overwhelmed by the experience of it all. Because friends and family or even therapists will come in and help you formulate a structure or formulate a perspective that allows you to look more positive at the situation. For me, my structure was at the time, like I said, I had a church community, I had music, I had arts to help give me perspective about the things. But when you don't have perspective, this is where you find people falling into things like suicide or falling victim and feeling helpless because they just don't have perspective. It's okay to have emotions, but emotions without perspective leads to damage. And that's very important.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds a lot like a support system and people in place to help you as you're going through the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. In your chapter, you talk a lot about you went to school and then you went home and you had to sort of cover up for the things that your mom was doing and tend to household needs. Was there ever a time where you were able to just go outside and play and have more of a childhood experience?
When my father went to jail at 11, I had to become an adult very, very early. In fact, my cousin today sent me a picture of me when I was 12 years old, and I was looking in my eyes, and I just saw a very, I saw me, but I also saw the weight that I was up under. And my way of being a child, I was helping my mother pay bills at 11, 12, 13 years old. But I did have some form of childhood in school. School was a way of escape for me. When I was in church, I played music. Those things allowed me to be a child. Before my father went to jail, I had some sense of childhood, because we had money and things of that nature. But I feel like my childhood played out after my mother died. I thought when my mother died, I found myself almost reverting to where I was or where I should have been as a child, 11, 10, 12 years old, and I had to grow into my adulthood. So there were moments where I just really didn't have the opportunity to be a child until after my mother passed away. It was really interesting.
Wow. You mentioned that your father had gone to jail when you were a kid. What is your relationship with your father like today?
It's very interesting. My father's been in prison for 21 years, and he just got out of jail in May.
Wow.
And I am now rekindling that relationship with him. We've kept up over the years, but my mother was really the catalyst for keeping us together. After she died, we didn't communicate that much. But now that he's out, we're rebuilding our relationship. And honestly, it feels like he never left. As a child, the way that I dealt with it was I imagined him on a very extended vacation. When my family name was pretty prominent where we come from because a lot of my family was in education. So when people asked me where my father was, I always said he was on vacation. So I think I mentally, subconsciously embraced that. So when he came home, it almost felt as if he was just coming home from vacation, even though it was a 21-year vacation.
What's the overall message you hope people take away from reading your story, Bennie?
Wow.
And it's okay. I know there's many, right?
The resiliency of the human spirit is very powerful. And in the moment of our worst despair, it is very hard to bounce or even imagine ourselves bouncing back. In my circumstances, I had the ability to navigate through drugs, through homelessness, through poverty, through dealing with an addiction parent, only by having moments to be able to escape and escape in the sense of being able to process things through music, through spirituality, through writing, through having alternatives to the noise, and which allowed me to have perspective. I also realized through my life that all the things that I experience, I use them as tools instead of them as weapons. And it is my hope and prayer that as people read my story and read about how me and my mother overcome just simple, small things, that people will use their situations as tools and not let them be weapons against them. And that's what my hope and prayer is.
That's so beautiful. Bennie, what's next for the Positive Minded People group and for you?
Absolutely. Well, over the years, I've hosted so many events. I want Positive Minded People to now be a platform for others. First, starting off with this book. This book is allowing 9 people, or 8 people, including myself, to be able to share their story. But there's almost 7,000 people in the group, and we're joining at least a couple hundred every month. So we're creating a web platform for people to be able to share their stories through both video and both through blog content. I've been, as in my professional life, I work in advertising and in the entertainment industry, and I've been working a lot with creating a platform both on video and TV platforms for people to be able to share. And also this book, while this is the first one, I think it's the first of many of be able to source stories right in our own group and allow people to share. So my goal for Positive Minded People is to allow people to be allowed to be a platform for people to share, to inspire, and to impact the world through stories.
Awesome. And there's an event coming this weekend. Is that correct?
Absolutely. The very first event that I ever had through the group was the Mount Hollywood Motivational Hike, where we hike up Mount Hollywood here in Los Angeles, and we invite local speakers to give a motivational session at the top. We do games and music and all types of stuff along the way. That's coming up this weekend, and I invite everyone to come out and enjoy.
Awesome. So for those who are hearing this as we're recording live, that is this Saturday, October 14th, and go to meetup.com and find the Positive Minded People group, and you can get all those details for that. And I'd like to just give a quick shout out to all our listeners, because I'm receiving messages of those who are listening. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I am so glad that I got through most of my questions with Bennie. Bennie, thank you so much for being here, and don't go anywhere because we're probably going to come back to you. But we are going to take a little break, and I think the break is roughly 90 seconds to 2 minutes. So just stay right there. If you'd like to, receive those notifications of when the book comes out, go to positivemindedpeople.com and do a quick little sign up there. And we're just so excited. You're going to love this book. So anyway, stay right there. We're going to be right back, and we're going to talk to Jaime Aplin.
Woohoo, Jaime.
No matter how your life looks today, your possibilities are endless. You deserve all the joy, peace, and excitement in life that you desire. Life doesn't come with a manual, and that's why personal coaching is so awesome. Moving forward is easier. Creating a new reality for yourself, healing your mind and body, it's all possible. Visit KimO'NeillCoaching.com today to learn more and schedule your free consultation.
What books are you reading? Are you ready for a must-read? Winner of the Inspirational Book of the Year Award and international bestsellers, Dare to Dream, This Life Counts by Debbie Dashinger, as well as the acclaimed Wisdom to Success, The Surefire Secrets to Accomplish All Your Dreams. Buy the books from Amazon today. U.S. Book Review and Writer's Digest said these are critics' picks. By Debbie Dashinger, Dare to Dream and Wisdom to Success contain gems to live your life by.
Sometimes we wish we could practically do nothing and still feel better. Guess what? You kinda can. When you schedule a Reiki or guided meditation session, you can just be and receive and allow the energy to shift. There's relief. These energy sessions can be done alone or combined with a coaching session. Find out more at KimO'NeillCoaching.com and click on the Energy Work tab.
Do you have a published book that never reached its bestseller potential? Are you working on a book or ebook you hope to publish soon? Do you have a book locked inside, waiting to release your message to the world? Go to mybestsellerbook.com. My Bestseller Book will launch your book to a guaranteed bestseller status. Learn more at mybestsellerbook.com.
All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. Of course, you're listening to Every Day is a New Day. I'm your host, Kim O'Neill, and I am talking with the authors from Positive Minded People, the book. Let me give you the full title again. Okay, it's called Positive Minded People, Inspiring Stories of Overcoming Adversity for Living a More Positive Life. And I'm so excited to talk to Jaime. She is coming to us live from Australia today. How are you doing, Jaime?
I'm fabulous. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my goodness. So I love your story because you, and we've talked about this outside of being part of the book too. Like, you have gone through so much in such a short period of time. Your story talks about, you talk about mother's guilt and self-love, and there's a whole lot of other stuff in there too. Would you please give us an overview of your chapter?
Absolutely. And exactly like you said, my transformation really has only been over the last 18 months, where really what I would call live my life as I knew it up until early last year, 2016. And then really I got to the point where I was at my lowest, most darkest point in my life. I was riddled with depression, anxiety, and drug addiction. And at that point in my life, I just fell into this massive hole, progressively over this time. And really it was my point where I decided that my life was worth more than what I felt I had been. And that really stems from, my girls now are 6 and 5 years old, 2 beautiful girls. And when I had them, I had this feeling like I just had to be a stay-at-home mum, because that's exactly what my mum had done, and to be there for them and all those kind of things. So prior to that, I was very much a career-driven, motivated woman, and really when I became a mum, I felt like I had to become this mum picture, I guess, where you put all your life on hold and you go, yep, I've got to do everything for my children. And so at that point, after they were born, and they were very close together, they're only 13 months apart. And, really at that point, I felt like I was giving them everything that they needed, but I wasn't giving anything to myself. And I was very much, it took quite a few years to kind of unravel. But I find that when you live up to an expectation of, someone else, or, where you think you need to be, and you're not there, like I got to the point where I felt so unfulfilled as a mom, and I wasn't doing, the right job, and, all those kind of things, that it got me to the point where I literally was so disaligned with who I actually was. Although I say I never probably knew who I was, it was who I thought I was. And that was always to do with, titles. I was a wife, and then I became a mother, or was a career woman. So all of those kind of titles or labels that I'd probably associated with my whole life, that's not who you are. So I tried to live up to those things and never felt like I kind of ever made it, essentially. So my story very much is around, and it really, stemmed from this mother's guilt, where I felt like I just wasn't being the mum to my girls that I should have been. So that guilt, it just built up and built up. And a big catalyst for that as well was when my eldest daughter was 20 months old, and she got diagnosed with cerebral palsy. So at that point, when you're faced with, finding out that your daughter is going to have a lifelong disability, there was a part of me that felt, well, I gave birth to her, I carried her, there must be some part of that, that was my fault. So I think from that moment going forward, I was just constantly trying to cover up this guilt, and the layers just went on, on top and on top. And it got to, like I said, to the point where I was, in depression, anxiety, and I was using drug addiction to escape that reality, because I felt like I literally was like a robot. I had no feelings. I was just trying to block out all of those things that, were underlying, I guess. So
What I love about you sharing your stories, I think mother's guilt is a very common theme for a lot of moms. And so by sharing your story, you're helping them see that there's a way out and that it's okay to not be attached to the labels and those expectations. When you became a mom, did you anticipate any sort of change or challenge that, like this, or anything different than what you experienced?
Not really. And they say, like, you're never ready to become a mother. And, my husband and I have been together we'd just gotten married, I think, the year before. So we'd been together for 9 years, nearly 10 years. And we'd always said we'd wanted children. And it wasn't until I actually got really sick and I got diagnosed with endometriosis. And they said, if you're going to have children, you probably want to have them relatively soon. And, it was something I said, it was always on our radar, but it wasn't like, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this, and then have a child. So it was never kind of planned as such. We knew we wanted to, have children. So when we kind of got faced with that, it's like, okay, cool, we'll go down that path. And then got news from the obstetrician that it, might be likely that we might not be able to have children. And, to be faced with the fact of, one day we're going to have children, one day we're going to have children, and then kind of get to the point where you're like, well, actually, I don't know if you can have children. It was like, oh, wow, like, how's that going to unfold? And we were blessed. We fell pregnant within a month of essentially trying. So she was obviously meant to be. So at that point, it was very much like, wasn't even on the radar to have children. So when it kind of happened, we were very blessed to, have it happen. But I don't know that I had any expectations about what being a mum would be like. I think most of our thoughts, I guess, around, being a mum comes from our childhood and what it was like for our parents or our mum or dad. So for me, and that's why I probably made the decision to put my career in and my life on hold as I knew it, was because that's what my mum was a stay-at-home mum, and, she always looked after us while my dad had his own business. So, in regards to, foreseeing any challenges, I mean, your life gets changed upside down. Having children is a whole nother world, but I didn't really feel like it would take me on the path that it really did. But I'm so grateful that it did, because like I said before, I never probably knew exactly who I actually was, because I was always so attached to these labels and these titles. Whereas now, and I talk about it, people say, oh, who are you, Jaime? And I say, I'm free to be me, because that's how I feel now. Because I know what it's like to not feel free, and I know what it was like to not feel like myself. So, it's taken me on the most incredible journey, and even my girls to this day, they are my greatest teachers. They teach me so much more about how to love myself and be all that I can be, so that they see that. I don't tell them what they need to do. They see that in their own mum, and I think there's nothing more powerful in being that type of role model for your girls. So, had I continued on the path I was on, where I was giving up everything for my girls, I think, well, by the time they would have got to 20, they would have gone, oh, I'll just put my life on hold to have children. I think, well, for me now, I feel like I'm in such an amazing place, and so are they, because I'm living my life to be myself, and they benefit greatly from that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Tell us more about what that turning point was like for you.
So I've talked about this to other people. In life, like I said, I was so disaligned with who I was, and really, I think that when we're born, there's a greater purpose for us being here. And I don't know that it needs to be this almighty, pinnacle place we reach, but I feel like our purpose in life is actually just to be ourselves and embody that like 120%. I think that's the only purpose we're actually here designed for. I lost my train of thought. What was the question again? Sorry.
No, I think you answered it. I mean, it sounds like the turning point was learning that it's okay to just be you, and to not have to attach labels to yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was also the pivotal moment that changed my life was when I wrote I'm Sorry letter to my girls. I was part of a workshop event and about parenting, and we got asked to write an I'm Sorry letter to our girls, obviously not to read to them, but just more of it as a healing thing. And what came out of that was I just released so much guilt. So in releasing, Bennie talked about before, emotions, negative emotions, when they're not released or healed, they build up, they manifest, they get nasty, and it had consumed me, this guilt. So really, forgiveness or acceptance is one of the most powerful things that you can do in order to heal, and in order to become more aligned with who you are. So for me, just releasing that guilt and going, you know what, like, you know, and this letter is actually, I actually wrote it in the book so that people could understand what that moment was like for me. And really just, you know, I think the first line of the letter was, you know, Mummy hasn't been herself for a long time now, and I don't really know where she went. And this letter just flowed. It was like divine intervention. Like my hand couldn't keep up. And what it was this guilt was just wanting to be released. And by me putting myself in a place, a safe place, to share that, it just opened me up. And I explain it like a light went off inside me. It's like by clearing baggage, by clearing things that are holding you back, this light starts to you know, glow again. And that for me was my worth. I was worth more than where I had been in my life until that point.
Bennie talked earlier about having structure as part of the healing process, and part of that was the support system that he had in his situation. What support system did you have in your situation, or did you have one?
I absolutely did. And at that point in my life, it was made public about the drug addiction that I had. So very much majority of the people that had been part of my life, and particularly this time as well, actually decided to separate from my husband and really just go on my own journey. So at that point, the parenting workshop that I went to was also, the lady also facilitated a spiritual group. And for me, I hadn't investigated spirituality, didn't really know what it was about, hadn't really ever, you know, thought too much about it. So for me, I realized that it resonated with me all of a sudden. It was like, you know what, like in order for me to fix my life, or, you know, to be where I want to be, I need to spend time on myself discovering what lights me up, like who am I actually about? And that was the first time in my life that I'd actually gone and done that. So for me, there was a community that I was a part of. So from my real world life, I completely started a new life, I think, if you want to call it like that. But I had this community where they were, you know, spiritual minded people. And all of a sudden I felt like I could talk to people about what I'd been through without judgment. Because at that point, what I needed was a safe space to go, you know what? And I talk about it, you know, it's so strong, and so did Bennie, you know. In owning my story was one of the most powerful things that I ever did, was because all of a sudden I was like, you know what, this is my story. And for me now to even be at this point and sharing this publicly and in the book, it's a huge thing, because it just means that you're so at peace with that story. So that community for me, like, I guess it's very similar to what Bennie's, you know, created in the positive minded people, where it's just a safe space to talk. And stories, like, I love stories, you know, there's so much power in stories. So I just felt all of a sudden like I could just be myself and not be judged, and consequently just, I guess, probably, you know, made my journey go faster, because I could embed myself in that type of situation where I could just be myself. So
Wow.
You mentioned having to step away a little bit from the life that you were living at that time, and I can imagine that had to be really challenging, making that decision to do that. What helped you to decide one way or the other, or how did you know that was the right next step for you?
Yeah, there was, the way that I explain it is how it had been since I'd had my girls was to be selfless. So give everything to everybody else and have nothing. Like, I had no hobbies. I had no real life, if you want to look at it. I had no sense of self. So the fact that selfless attitude or selfless perspective had got me into severe depression, anxiety, and drug addiction, it was like, well, I can't go down that path again. Like, that was no longer an option. People go, oh, you know, how did you do it, you know, so easily? It's like, because I realized that by being selfless, I had literally nothing for me. So I actually became selfish. I decided that I was my number one priority in order to help my girls and to, repair my relationship, my marriage. It all started with me. So it was like, okay, cool. So I went from being selfless. That got me to a dark place. So it's like, I'm going to be selfish and put myself first. So for me, that was just like amazing. So when I made that decision to, separate from my husband and just take the time for me, it felt so right in my heart. And it was like all of a sudden, again, by clearing stuff out, I was like, all of a sudden I was trusting, you talk about, Kim, with intuition, you start to trust that this is the right decision for me. I didn't my husband is the most amazing man, and, we're back together now. And, I just trusted that this was right for me. So this would be what is right for people around me as such as well. So that's what I did. And it was interesting because Mark and I have been together for since we're 18, so a long time. I felt like I was like young again. I was like, oh my God, I felt like the world was at my feet. What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? Because all of a sudden I was making decisions for myself. And it felt amazing. So to make that original decision, yes, because it doesn't conform with the norm. Oh, how could you walk away? You had a good marriage and a beautiful family and all those kind of things. But I just knew what was right in my heart. And when you follow your heart, you always go where you need to be. So.
Wow. That's another courageous decision is choosing. I know, right, Bennie? Wow. Yeah. Choosing to take time away from everything as you knew it to give back to yourself, fill your own cup up. And so, Jaime, I know that you now host a really awesome group online for others who are needing a space to develop more self-love. And would you just share a little bit about that so people can look you up if they want to find out more about that?
Definitely. So I think it's been a couple of different things, and particularly, even this whole positive-minded, group that Bennie, I think it was a bit of inspiration, but it's been something that has been really close to my heart because at the time that I needed that community. So now I'm in a place where it's just like, I want to create that space for others because I know how incredibly hard it can be when you're, transitioning or really, growing into yourself, that your real world, like your work world or your friends world that, may have been like that for years it may not facilitate that change for you. So now I've created the Free to Be Me consciousness community, which is a Facebook closed group. Where I've got some amazing people in there that are showing up as themselves and to have that safe space. So that's incredible. And likewise, I've created a Free to Be Me consciousness community, Adelaide, for Meetup. So I'm hosting my first event here on the 23rd of October. And it's just going to be this community safe space for people to go to talk about their story, develop, and understand more about themselves. And just allow them to speak, I guess, freely, because I know how much that was pivotal to me and my transformation. And I want to provide that safe space for others to do the same. So anyone out there listening that would love to, and it's all about showing up as you. I don't want, the glossy, pretty parts that, sometimes we have to show people in our lives. This is really about you showing up as yourself. So yeah, I would love you guys to make contact with me and be a part of the group. It's just incredible.
Beautiful. I think a lot of people need a space like that. So that's really wonderful that you're providing that for people.
And if I can say, I love that, Jaime, because when the first step of healing is simply to be real and to be free. And when you can't be free with what's real, you're only creating a cycle instead of a straight line.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Bennie. Yeah. Yep.
Well, before we close, is there anything that either of you would like to add? Something I haven't asked you? I mean, Bennie, we didn't really talk much about your mom, and she's like a huge pivotal part of your story. And what I love is that Jaime, has that sort of mom perspective that she's able to add from her own story. But is there anything either of you would like to add before we start to wrap up?
I would just say, my mother is a huge part of my story. And it's interesting that Jaime's story is a lot about being a mother. I saw my mother deal with a lot of mother's guilt. My mother felt very incomplete and very inadequate as a mother because she was on drugs herself and very strung out on it. And there were many, many times in my growing up that my mother would cry to me and tell me sorry for not being able to be the mother that she felt like she should have been. And I will say that when you have to be positive, not only for yourself, but for others, it could be extremely hard because sometimes in you trying to help other people, you're asking, where can I be filled? And where do I have my security blanket and my hope? And I hope, I would like to say that sometimes people in the security blanket that you're looking for will never be outside or never come from the outside. It will always come from within, and having that radical optimism. And I will say that my mother, even in her worst, she always had a moment of saying, we can make this work. We could find a way. And through the tears, we're going to traverse over that. You'll learn a lot about in my story about how we overcame a little bit of poverty by selling bootleg VHSs when we were young. You'll learn in my story about how that story opened up my mother to new possibilities. And I told my mother before she died, thank you for being an example of relentless making it work, quote unquote, making it work, trying to make it work. And that is the one positive thing that has stuck with me through the years, is that you make it work because no one else will work it for you. And for that reason, as Jaime said about mother's guilt, my mother has nothing to be guilty about. And Jaime has nothing to be guilty about because through her own experiences and her own triumphs, her kids now have a springboard off of her story. And for that, there's nothing to be guilty about it. It's only to be real with the truth, because the truth, like an old Bible scripture says, the truth will make you free.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Woo! That is a fantastic ending before the ending, Bennie. So thank you for that. Radical optimism. I love it. Well, and Jaime, was there anything extra that I didn't ask you that you wanted to add? And either way.
Yeah, something I guess that's just, come up as you've been talking is, when people, and I know myself when I was in depression, anxiety, like for me and addiction, anything that you're, feel like you're just trapped with, that you just, how am I going to get myself out of it? The way that I explain it is that those things, and I call them blessings now, is because they make you get to a point where you have to make that choice. You make that choice to either stay there and continue. And I did for quite a few years. So I totally honor anyone that's out there listening today that is going through that, because if someone said to me 2.5 years ago, Jaime, you need to change, I would have gone, no, you know what, see you later. All right. So I totally respect that, but it's important. Like, I see them as blessings, is because they get you to such a point where, like I said, you have the decision to stay where you are, or you have the decision to change. And for me, I literally got to the point where my breaking point, my point of no return, where I knew something had to change. And for anyone out there listening, it can be the smallest change. It just has to be a change. I remember this blog this day that I had, where I decided that I wanted to become a morning person. And so I moved my phone away from my bed so that I had to get up to my alarm. And at that point, it was like I got up and I woke up 5 minutes before my alarm and ended up going for a walk. But long story short, this blog talks about this completely. So I called it one new thought, one completely new day. So never feel like you have to make a, drastic, huge, massive change in your life in order for you to move in the right direction. Just decide, make a decision that, tomorrow I'm going to do this different. And then potentially the next day, but it's this snowball effect. Like, it's incredible. I explain it like when you go through anxiety, you have one bad thing happens and it spirals out of control. That's anxiety. Think about it in the opposite way. Okay, I'm going to make one small change, and then all of a sudden all these other things will come up because you're changing. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Just make the decision and start to do something. I can totally resonate with that. Well, thank you to both of you, both Bennie and Jaime, for being on the show today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, I absolutely have loved this. And as a reminder, the Positive Minded People book will be available this month, October 2017. And we have some really, really awesome bonus giveaways for those who ordered during the pre-order phase, which might only be a week or so. So I absolutely recommend going to the website and signing up so you can receive that notification so that you can order and get those bonus giveaways. And here are just a few of them. So we have a digital download of my 13-minute guided meditation that will help you get grounded and regain inner peace. We have a digital download of author Calvin Witcher's relationship book, which is about how to create conscious and connected relationships. We have some really cool magical incense by author Gianna Ciccelli. And we have a 20-minute intuitive reading that you can get with author Noah Alvarez, who I'm actually going to be speaking to next month on this show on November 8th. And if you'd like to also find us on social media, you can go to Facebook or Instagram at Positive Minded People Book. If you have loved hearing from today's authors, I am still doing 5 more of these shows. Some will be only accessible via Facebook Live, and others will be here on BBS, just as you listen to this one. If you'd like to see the ones that are going to be on Facebook Live, you can go to Facebook and find me at Kim O'Neill Coaching, and O'Neill is O'Neill, at Kim O'Neill Coaching, and see a list of the other upcoming interviews. You can find that on my website, which is KimO'NeillCoaching.com. And of course, all of those links, social media, website, all of it, also right there accessible on the BBS page for this show. Lastly, I want to leave you with what my underlying message is for every single person in the world, which means you. You are more amazing than you know. Ooh, I'm getting emotional.
Wow.
You are more amazing than you know. It's absolutely okay for you to be who you truly are. You have 2 stories today from 2 people who've done just that. And I hope, lastly, that you will always, can't say it enough, always, know that you are never, ever alone, even when it seems like it. So through our stories, you can gain glimpses of where to connect with your support system if you don't already feel like you have one. Some of that can be reaching out to groups like, Bennie was a part of his church. And Jaime had other people she knew, and she, found a spiritual group. In my story, which I haven't shared with you yet, my story actually had a lot to do with connecting inside and with, a source greater than me, I refer to as my higher self. So just know that you are never alone. There is always help. Every day is always a new day. I had to get that in, right? That's what the show's called. Every day is always a new day. The sun will always rise again. And you do have the power to overcome adversity in your life, whatever your circumstances may be. Connect with others around you. Ask for help if you need it. And love yourself more every day as best as you can, even if you're still trying to figure out what the heck does that even mean. Know that there is always, always hope, because every day is always a new day. And with that, I hope you have a fantastic one. So until next time, bye for now.